I find you. I find you. I find you.
My name is Langa. I'm mother of 4 kids. We've got 4 kids between me and my husband, and 2 girls and 2 boys aged between 3 and 19. I am happy to be part of Women of Hope project in Rotherham, which has given me the opportunity to talk to one of the inspiring women in England. Her name is Rianna Walcott. I would like to thank Rotherham Council and WOW Women for the support to make this project a success for us. Thank you so much, Rotherham. Hi, Rianna.
Hello.
Tell me about yourself.
So I'm 26. I'm a PhD student at King's College London, looking at social media and how Black people present their identity online. And sometimes I'm a musician and I run a decolonization project and also work in mental health.
Okay. Oh, that's lovely. That's a lot.
That's pretty much everything, I think.
You have put everything, but I would need you to explain a little bit more. So tell me, I would like to know when did you start singing? What?
So I've been playing the piano since I was little. Since I had piano lessons from about age 8 to 14. And I did all of my grades in that time. So I got my grade 8 piano. And at the same time, like I really liked, I was playing classical music, but I really, really enjoyed jazz. So from being like about 8 years old, I knew that was like the only type of music I really liked when I was about 8. And since then, I've been listening to and singing jazz. And then I was in like a ton of choirs when I was young. And yeah, that sort of translated to me singing solo as a soloist when I was about 15, like school gigs and sort of things like that. And I think I sang with my first jazz band when I was 17, another school thing. And I had an a cappella group. Just like all of the really nerdy.
I grew up in a cappella world, so we sang a cappella a lot. Although, believe me, I'm not a singer at all.
So, what kind of like do you mean like the traditional show tunes, a cappella stuff, or
more gospel a cappella from Seventh Day Adventist Church?
I've not done very much gospel stuff. An oversight, I think. But yeah, like loads of classical singing, loads of a cappella, and then eventually lots of jazz. So I had a band up in Scotland. Obviously, it's all been a bit disrupted because of COVID, which is a shame because we were good and we didn't get much of a chance to play together because all of us had loads of different jobs. So like, for some reason, everyone in the band, like most of them were like doctors. So we had, my keys player was a doctor who lived in Glasgow. My bassist was a PhD student who's now in London. Doctor on the trumpet, doctor on the drums. This is really weird. And we all lived in different places. And my favorite guitarist is an engineer. So, you know, and then eventually we were spread between Edinburgh, Glasgow, London, Newcastle, and that kind of, but we still get together and play whenever we can.
Oh, that's lovely. I mean, professionals having something on the side, you know.
Yeah, like semi-professional. Everything that I enjoy to do, I've monetized, which is really sad. Like all of my hobbies, like there's like very few hobbies that I have now that aren't stuff I also make money off, which is quite tragic, I think. Apart from like baking and all my plants, that's still just for me.
You like baking as well?
I like baking a lot. I did a lot of baking over quarantine, so.
Oh yeah, a lot of people did. I actually baked as well. It came out horrible. I tried 4 or 5 times and I gave up. I tried to bake the South African amagwinya. They're fat cooks.
What's that again?
They're fat cooks. We call them fat cooks.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are they like?
They're buns mixed. It's flour mixed with yeast and sugar and salt. Then you let it. What do you call it?
Rice.
Rise. Yeah. You let it rise and you deep fry it.
Okay.
But the thing is, they wouldn't rise. So I had to throw away the flour, the dough, because it wouldn't rise. So I'm horrible when it comes to baking. I can cook, but no bake.
Yeah, I think you either get one or the other. Like, it seems really rare that you're able to do both. I don't usually have the patience for baking, but because we were in quarantine and there was like nothing else to do, I made loads of loaves of. I started my own sourdough. What else did I make? Like loads of focaccia. I bought 25 kilograms of flour at the start of lockdown.
So you were one of the hooders. You were one of the people that we panic buying.
No, I wasn't. The only reason I did it was because everyone else had done it, so there was no flour in my corner shop. I would have just gotten one bag, but instead I had to order wholesale from a mill, and they only sold it in the big bags.
Yeah.
So I just bought one and then just steadily worked through it. I've nearly finished it, so I actually did use it.
At least you didn't throw it away. Good thing. You saved food. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's no wastage.
No,
at least flour
we don't
keeps.
waste food at all.
I didn't do the whole like toilet roll thing.
No, I didn't do the toilet roll. I wish I did though, but I didn't. So, do you have any singers that inspires you, especially that you like jazz?
Definitely. So my love affair with jazz started with Ella Fitzgerald and led me to less sort of traditionally beautiful voices. So Ella can sing anything. She's got that 3-octave range and her voice was so beautiful. And like, if you want to learn a song, there's no better way to do it than to listen to Ella Fitzgerald sing it right. But other than that, I'm a big fan of Sarah Vaughan, who I think has like one of the most like beautiful and mature voices I've ever heard. And also like people with really deep registers like Carmen McRae and Betty Carter, and people like Billie Holiday with that like lovely raspy voice, and yeah, stuff like that. Unusual people like Blossom Dearie and Rose Murphy. I'm just saying names now.
Well, to be honest, you've said a lot of names and I don't even know one. So I'm going to go home and check them all. Yeah, check them all.
My playlist. I've got a really good vocal jazz playlist on Spotify that I've been working on since like 2015. And it's like 10 hours long. And I have loads of friends who subscribe to it because they say it's like the perfect playlist for a dinner party. Yeah. Because it's just...
I'll check it. I will. Oh, okay. You've performed in different places in London, Glasgow, even Los Angeles. So what do you think? How do you feel about performing around the world? Let's say in Africa, for instance.
I would love to, if anyone would have me. The thing is, so me performing in some of those places was by circumstance. So the reason I got to perform in Los Angeles was because I was living there for my year abroad at university. And while I was there, I was going to UCLA and I was able to audit a few courses at the Ethnomusicology Center, which is huge. And had like, it was my first time being able to be like actually taught jazz and having like, because usually it's all like a self-taught thing, just listening to lots of singers and singing in the shower. But this was my first time actually being able to get like some formal education in it. And I got loads of really wicked opportunities while I was there. Just like made friends with loads of young jazz musicians, had a few gigs, joined another really excellent a cappella group called Random Voices, and they like compete and like perform nationally and stuff. Yeah, shout out to Random Voices. I love you. And yeah, so like I had like a really musical time while I was over there doing like a lot of performing. But that was like genuinely pure circumstance. And then other than that, if I've traveled with, so I was in the jazz band at Edinburgh University and they'd go on tour. So, you know, got to sing in like Belgium with them at like a jazz festival there. I've sung in the Edinburgh International Jazz Festival a couple times because I used to live in Edinburgh. You know, I'm kind of downplaying it now, but a lot of it was just like really wonderful luck, being in the right place at the right
places.
time and singing with the right people who wanted to give me a shot.
Oh, that's really, really nice. You know, we can only, most of the time we can achieve through other people, you know, when...
I've been super lucky, and especially when you live in places like when I was living in Edinburgh, because it's such a small city with such a small music scene. Like it's not even as big as like Glasgow's music scene is. It means that once you've sung with a couple people, you sort of can sing with everyone. Like you know, the group of musicians all know each other really well, particularly the jazz musicians. They all just borrow from each other. And there was a long time when I didn't have like a stable band, like you just switch in and out people. And so, you know, you get to know people really quickly like that, just depping for people and singing with. I haven't spoken about my singing in an interview ever.
Oh, no, you should push on that because I think your voice is really great.
Thank you so much. That's really sweet of you. Like it's such a hobby. Like it's not something that I ever thought I'd do like properly professionally, you know? Like I make a bit of money singing, but not much. And, you know, it's just something I've always loved. Like I kind of thought at one point that I would do it at university, do music at uni. But you know, my life took a different path and I ended up taking English because I figured I could at least keep up with being musical at the same time. And yeah, like sort of the older I get, the sort of less likely my career as a pop star comes.
You write as well.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, you write as well. So besides singing, you write.
Write what? I write a lot of things. Like, do you mean write music?
No, just normal
write, yeah.
writing. Yes, just
yeah, I
normal
do both.
writing. You're a writer as well. So that's another thing that actually is drawing me close to you. You know, want to know more about you. And for someone who's a PhD, who sings and writes, what else? I feel like today I'm going to learn more.
We'll get around to it. Lots of talks, I guess.
Yeah.
With the writing, funnily enough, I hate writing. I hate doing it. I hate it so much, but I'm really good at it.
You're so good at it, so you don't have much choice there. You need to edit.
What a sad complaint to have. But it just means that it's all I know. And it's people keep asking me to do it. And I love the finished product. I love researching and I love being able to talk about things that I care about. But I'm the worst writer. Like I'm the kind of person that will like not be able to start writing until like midnight, and then I'll be writing at 5 a.m, or I'll leave everything till really last minute. And my writing habits are just all over the place, and I'm trying really hard to work on it, like, you know, to get things on time and meet my deadlines, but I always take on way too much work. Yeah, I'm just terrible at it.
Is it because you're so good at it? You can do it at 3:00 in the morning and still be good, and do it at 10 while drinking tea and still be good at it.
I think that's part of me. Like, I think that's my nerves, you know, like, you know how some people procrastinate and leave things to the last minute so that it's not their fault if it's not very good. Do you know? Like, I think that's like I think it's a negative trait of mine. Like, it's the sort of thing where I'm being very honest, where you
understand.
You know, if you leave an essay to the last minute and then it's terrible, oh, well, it's not your fault because you left it to the last minute.
Yeah, I didn't have enough time to do it. Yes, I understand. I'm that person. I wait until it's last minute, and everyone's asking, "Have you done? Have you done?" I'm like, I'm doing it now, you know. So when it's a mess, I'll be like, "Well, I don't have enough time to do it. What do you expect?" So I do understand. Okay, and you're an activist. You do a lot of things. You talk about Black mental health. in BAME. And so tell me a little bit more about it.
So I think it's one of those things where calling yourself an activist is a tricky thing, right? But I think I'm sort of making my peace with it now. I think that I don't think anyone would challenge me if I said I was an activist, because sometimes it's really embarrassing to say that you're an activist and someone's like, are you? But, you know, everything I do, literally all of the work I do, everything I care about is pretty much about like Black people, honestly, and particularly about Black women, non-binary people. And I just, it's what I'm interested in. It's stuff that matters in terms of my own personal life and experiences. And I think that I'm in a good position to be able to write honestly and fairly about what we experience. And I think not just the writing, but I have a lot of patience, kind of. And well, my patience is running out, but you know, I have some. And it's also I have got a lot of access to white spaces. So by virtue of being an academic, by virtue of doing my PhD and being involved in so many things, like I have been working with the NHS on like a mental health research project recently, and the Nottingham University. And, you know, I think that I'm in a position to use some privilege for good. And so I must. So it's the sort of thing where I have spent so much time in the university system, for instance, so much time. I've spent all my life in education. I've never taken a year out, which I deeply regret. But it means that I really understand how things work. And at this point, and I really feel like because I'm a Black woman in education where there aren't that many of us at PhD level and above, it means that I'm like, all of us I haven't met a Black scholar who isn't also an activist, to be honest, in some way or form. We all know each other. Like I'm in a WhatsApp group with most of the other Caribbean PhDs in the UK. You know, there's few enough of us to have a WhatsApp group and weekly meetings. So it's when you are that aware, that intimately acquainted with how few of you there are and how many barriers there are in your way, it becomes impossible not to say and do anything.
Yeah.
You know, because even just for your own like selfish reasons, you want there to be more people doing the work that you do, more people doing the research you do, and more faces to pass in the hallway who understands what's going on and who you can work with and network with and write with, you know, like it's in our own interest to have more of us around. And whilst like obviously representation will not fix the problems with like a deeply colonial institution, it is important to sort of work where you are. So I care very much about like decolonizing the institution, about kind of tearing it down and starting again. But also, you know, I can think that way in larger terms and think about the future and think about like imagine a better future, but I also need to deal with the present that I'm in. And the present that I'm in would be a lot better if there were more Black people.
More Black people, yes, yes. So how do you cope with your own mental health? You've got a lot of things that you're doing, and to be honest, and to be honest, when it comes to trying to be an activist for Black people and especially mental health, it does affect a lot. So how do you cope with that? How do you deal with your own mental health?
Well, I have a really amazing support system. I've got a lot of friends who are in very similar positions to me. Like all of my friends are high flyers, really like everyone has a workload that looks like mine. And we all make space for each other, keep each other sane, keep each other accountable as well. Have you taken a holiday? You know,
Yeah.
when are you going to stop working for the night? I credit a lot of that to my flatmate, Paula Akpan. Like we went to school together and, you know, you may have heard of her, a little micro celebrity. So it's we both are working in this quite small space during this pandemic. And, I think we've been definitely keeping each other sane and, like being able to bounce things off each other. Like, do you think this is fair? Do you think this is like the way that I should have been treated in this situation? Do you think that, and encouraging each other to take time off. Like we watch a lot of bad telly together and, all of that sort of thing. Do skincare together and stuff when we remember. So I've got a really excellent support network. Like a lot of credit for that also goes to my boyfriend, Tom. He is wonderful at getting me to take some time off. And, we also talk a lot about, it's nice to have space that isn't just talking about the work I do and things like that, but also we're all Black people. So, you don't really avoid talking about, the issues that we're going through and race and stuff. So it can all be quite heavy in general. That's the real problem with working in an area that is so intertwined with your own life and personal experience. But yeah, I've got a lot of people supporting me, my sister, my friends, my partner. And then also I go to therapy.
That's good. That's good. And it's very few actually to hear a Black person saying, I go for therapy. It's like it's a stigma, going for therapy. Oh, that's not good. That's not good. Don't you have enough friends to talk to?
About. Like, I think it's so important to normalize therapy and to normalize, like, if you need to take antidepressants, I take antidepressants too. And like, definitely not embarrassed about telling people that, because they've made me feel like myself again. Do you know what I mean? Like I have a tendency to burrow and become an unproductive human member of society, like kind of not leaving my room for a week vibes. And this, I think that my support network plus my medication plus my therapist is what keeps me on an even keel, like I would be far, far less happy and fulfilled without all three of those things. And I think it's important that we're honest about that in case there's someone else who would vastly benefit from. I think everyone would benefit from therapy. I think it should be as compulsive as going to the it should be compulsory as going to the dentist. Like,
true.
Why not?
I understand, and
definitely included.
Yeah, I understand. I know because a lot of Black women, when they're going through so much, like, you need to talk to someone. They're like, no, it's a form of weakness. Yeah. I don't know why they treat it as a form of weakness, because talking to someone, actually, it's like half problem or half whatever you're feeling. Half of it, you've left it there. You go as a different person outside, and start new problems anyway. But you've talked about those other problems and they're gone and dusted. New problem starts.
Having someone separate to the situation to be able to and also I think it's really important to mention that I go to a Black woman therapist. And that has always been really important to me, because I've had some terrible experiences with white women therapists, honestly. But, I think having someone who has an experience that mirrors yours, or even if it doesn't mirror your experience exactly, it's really important that you have someone that you don't have to explain the basics to. Like, I'm not having to there's so many times in my life and my work that that all Black people have to justify their experiences, prove that racism is happening, and prove how hard it is for us. But when you're speaking to a Black woman therapist, she already knows. She knows what it looks like. She knows what it feels like. And she knows exactly how detrimental it can be. So you've already cut out a step of explaining. You just have to say, oh, this happened to me, you know? And that's really important, I think. So yes, could not recommend that highly enough. But yes, I understand that. I mean, even telling my, parents and closer family that was something I was doing, it's something that they don't necessarily understand still, though they're working on it. Like, I think having like a daughter that's like an advocate and that has written so many articles and like publications about it kind of thing, kind of means that eventually you have to stop and take it seriously.
They must be proud. They must be proud. They might think, okay, why are you going to the therapy and all? You can talk to me. You can talk to us. But they are proud, that at least you're getting some help somewhere, than just not talking.
That thing where you just said you should talk to me. Like, that's definitely something they've said. But I think they're getting it slowly but surely. And I think they probably can see how much happier and like sort of well-adjusted I am. I hope. I think I'm happy and well-adjusted. So hopefully they'll see that. And then I would love it if, I think everyone, like, I think it would be really, like, my ultimate goal is for them to at least try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be telling women around Rotherham here, try, go. Because we tend to say, okay, talk to me, I'm listening, but I'm not a therapist. I'll be like, women tends to say, be strong, keep on moving, without even listening to the story.
They're all going to do so many different things and say different things. Like, I love the fact that my therapist kind of holds me accountable and tells me things that, like, I don't necessarily want to hear,
Yep.
Stuff like, like if I've done something wrong, she'll tell me. Yeah. And that's important.
Good thing about Black person, they do tell you, straight. They will tell you, like, no, you're wrong, which is good. Yep. And there was this Black Lives Matter, what has been happening, and how do you feel about it? I know you talk a lot about Black people and you really want to support Black people, and the Black Lives Matter came in and it brought so much misunderstanding with a lot of people. I see it at work. You get someone saying, oh, I'm so fed up about this Black Lives Matter. And I'm there and I don't know how to respond to it, because I'm Black. I'm the only Black person there, and I don't have anyone to support me and say, yes, Black Lives Matter in this way and that way. So Black, oh, okay, yes, all lives matter, So how do you handle this Black Lives Matter?
Honestly, I don't tend to come into contact with that many people who would challenge that anymore. I used to, but I think I've done a very effective job of culling people like that from my life. Because I think it's so important that I am surrounded by people who understand that Black Lives Matter. Like, that is the base level. Like, if I have to argue to you that, like, Black Lives Matter and all lives matter are incompatible, if I have to do that work, then you really have no business speaking to me. Like, why?
I'll send you my email. Then you can actually send all the information. So when someone says, you know what, all lives matter, and so fed up with this Black Lives Matter, then I can have something tangible, something real to say to that person. Maybe make them understand more why we're saying Black Lives Matter at the moment.
I think the thing about it is I care about, let me just say it. I care about our well-being first and foremost. Part of our lives mattering, part of Black Lives Mattering, is that we are able to experience the fullest and richest joys that everyone else is able to experience. You are not experiencing full and rich joy if you're having to explain to someone that your life matters, right? That's not your job. Someone else is doing that job. Like, if this is happening in your workplace, you're not being paid to do that. So for me, what I'm, like, explaining to this random white person who I don't really care about and who doesn't really care about me and isn't going to have any real impact on my life, at the end, on my deathbed, am I going to be grateful that I made that one white person see? No, I'm not. It's not going to matter. So I much prefer to talk to people about race and things like this, to people who want to hear it, to talk to people who want to learn something, not to fight with people. I spent a lot of time fighting. I used to be one of them, the kind of person who find themselves in the comments of an article, how dare you say this, proper keyboard warrior,
Yeah.
And then eventually I had to just cut that behavior loose because it wasn't good for me. It wasn't healthy for me.
No.
I care about your health and your well-being, right? If someone's talking to you these kinds of things, like, oh, I just think, why? You just need to ask them, why have you come to me to explain this to you? Why do you think it's appropriate for me to explain this to you? Couldn't you have this conversation with like this white man over there? Like, like that's the time for an ally to take over. You don't need to be doing that work. You've got bigger and more important things to worry about, like your survival and your joy. That's what you need to be focusing on, not to be focusing on like how to get this man to understand that you're worthy of living. Who cares? Who cares? That's for someone else's job. Send him to HR. You know what I mean? If your company wants you to explain people like this, if this is happening on your work time or whatever, then maybe it's time for the diversity and an inclusion part of your company to pay you to deliver a workshop to let them all know, if you're so inclined. But it's not for you to just chat to this man over the water cooler about how your life has value. Sorry, I get very upset about this. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not doing it.
Good. That shows that you're so passionate about your work and your beliefs.
It just shows I put up with a lot of nonsense.
I like it very well. Oh, you're studying your education. It sounds posh to me,
It sounds posh.
Yeah, PhD. Hey, how many Black people got PhD? Yeah. So
more than you'd expect. But the worst part is like how many Black people have PhDs and then get employed afterwards. That's the problem.
So would you like to tell me more? I know you've said a few things, but
no, of course. Do you want to know about what I'm studying? Because I think it's really interesting.
Yep, I want to know what you're studying.
So, as with everything else, I am fascinated by us, by Black people and what we do. So that's kind of, again, where my research lies. So I started out with an English Lit background. My undergraduate and my master's were both at Edinburgh University, and they're both in English Lit. And my master's, I wrote about Windrush, I wrote about Caribbean Black British writers, and I wrote about how Black people in London, in particular, in these books, the 4 books I chose to look at, how they looked at each other, and more importantly, how they looked at white people. So I was writing about the gaze and about reversing the gaze. And like, so the white gaze is the way that white people look at us and sort of talk about the other, the Oriental colonial other, and how we behave, and they're observing us and thinking about how Black people behave and what makes us tick. But I think what's important is that when we are being observed, we are also observing back. So there are strong, rich histories of Black people also writing about whiteness and observing things about white people and making our own conclusions to stay safe. And especially when, moving to other countries, like there are, like we call it, what is it? So like it's like the second sight. I can't remember what Du Bois called it. That's really embarrassing. Hold on, this is actually very important. I will not get this wrong. Double consciousness. Oh my God, how did I forget that? Oh my God, I hope my English teacher doesn't see this and then tell me off. So it's that I'm interested in that double consciousness that Black people have, where we're both aware of how we're viewed by the world and by white people, but we also have a secondary ability to view the world as it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, white people might see the world one way, whereas Black people will see the world, white people see it, but also
in a different room.
See how we're observed, how we exist in it as well. So that double consciousness, that second sight, that oppositional gaze is what I'm interested in. And so now I'm looking at how that functions on social media. I'm looking at how Black people talk about ourselves, about identity and race on spaces like Twitter and Facebook, how we talk about ourselves, talk about the other, what kind of linguistic developments happen on social media in the ways that we speak about people. How does the fact that white people are watching factor into that? The fact that we're observed having these conversations. This is like a really good example, because we're having a conversation about race right now, a very honest and open one. But maybe would we be having this conversation differently if we weren't being observed? If we weren't aware that this would be watched by other people, that there's other people in the room right now? How would the conversation be different if it was just us, two Black people in a room? So I'm interested in how those conversations happen when you're not being observed versus how they happen when you are being observed. Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell. Sorry, it was a really long explanation, but that's kind of what I'm interested in.
I understand. It's we can have a totally different conversation the way we speak if there's no one watching or listening to us. But then a conversation changes, and the way we speak it changes when we are being watched. When there are people around, we become more conscious of the things we say.
I'm also, just thinking about that too, the fact that we're two Black women from different places as well, with different, dialects and everything, and probably different histories of slang and everything. But we are still talking about being Black. It's definitely a diasporic conversation that's also informed by where you are in the diaspora.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't presume that the same conversations are happening in Anglophone social media spaces as they are in like non-Anglophone spaces. And I wouldn't presume that we're having the exact same conversation that like myself, I'm West Indian by descent, I'm Jamaican and Bajan, but I certainly wouldn't presume that they would be having a similar conversation over in Jamaica and Barbados that I'm having. Like, no, there's obviously huge variance in what we're talking about, but there is something tying us together in that conversation. And that something often comes across on social media, where there's like this sort of slowly like homogenous way of speaking and thinking and talking about issues that still has its variance, but there's some sort of thread, and I'm really interested in that thread.
Okay. You've said a lot. So what advice would you give to, me and a lot of young people who are still trying to get to university, but I know a lot of people will talk about university like, the finance, why I can't just work. There are so many Black young people who are choosing not to go to university. What advice can you give them?
I think that rather than, aiming my advice to Black people, I think that it's more important that we aim that sort of advice at the institutions and at admissions offices, and, because you won't have, like, it's all well and good to have more Black students in the space, more Black students at university and doing these jobs. But if they don't make the space better for us to exist in, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like right now, there is an attainment gap for Black students where Black and white students going in with the exact same grades will come out with different grades. Do you know what I mean? So there's something about the environment, the university environment, that is not conducive to us doing well, that is not conducive, or as well as we should, or as well as we could, right? So I wouldn't recommend, I'm not really sure I would recommend what I've done. That's not really great to say, is it? But I don't think it's been all that wonderful. I don't think it's been it's I can be grateful to it for the people that I met there, but a lot of the things that I've learned from other academics of color. So I've gotten there and then found my people, and then I do all of my learning outside of the institution afterwards. You don't have to be at uni to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But I am grateful that I've done that, and I think it's important, and I do want to do something about the structure as it is and make it more hospitable to Black students. So really, I would say that advice has to go first and foremost to the institutions. Don't just tell us to come or say, oh, they're welcome here. Make us welcome there. You know, like, make sure that you're changing your curriculum so it's actually inclusive. Make sure that, you know, you're not in a classroom and suffering every day because the people around you are too, you know, don't understand. Like, you know, we're coming in with this double consciousness, with this second sight, with this unique perspective that actually puts us, I think, puts us heads and shoulders above lots of other students. You know, like, we have a better understanding of the world a lot of the time, and that's not fostered, that's not nurtured. When you're there, you're told that second sight is wrong all the time. And that's part of the trauma of being a Black person in white spaces. You know, being aware of how things are and constantly having to deal with that without anyone really taking any notice of the fact that you know what's up. So until universities make these spaces better for Black children, I don't want to. Like, obviously we should go, because like, we'll change it by being there. But I think this real message has to go to, you know, actual universities and institutions that have, you know, and the people who are high up enough to change the culture.
Yeah.
Because there is something in the culture that needs to change. You need to have more Black people teaching, more Black people in the, you know, as more Black people in the classroom, in the room, on both sides of the educational divide, but also a more hospitable space. It needs to be a place that is more than just a site of trauma.
That's a powerful advice. That's really good. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for actually taking your time to, well, listen to me asking you all these questions. And your answers were just simple. And I hope you really continue to do so well. And I'll tell you about myself. I don't want you to go like, oh, some woman interviewed me and just left me hanging. I'm a mom. I'm 42 years old. I'm a mom of 4 kids. Between me and my husband, we've got 4 kids. And my oldest, 4 kids, the oldest ones are 19, 2 of them. And the youngest is 3. So it's a big gap, and it was lovely. And I'm so thankful to Rotherham Council and the WOW women for giving us this opportunity. You know, and I really, really hope you continue doing what you do. Don't lose the sight of what you're doing. Okay. Yeah.
I hope so. If I don't burn out too fast, I will.
Yeah. No, never. Good luck. And
Thank you.
it was
Thank
really
you.
lovely to meet you.
You're starting a new course, right?
Yes,
Yourself.
in mental health nursing. With kids and everything, you keep on putting it aside, and like, I'll do it. But then I already work with young people with autism, and mental health. It's always been something that I love. Mental health is something that I've always loved doing, and I've always wanted to be a nurse. Back home, you become a nurse for everything, but here it's either you're an adult nurse, mental health nurse, or child. And I love mental health. I'm so passionate about it. It's somebody's thinking, you know, how they think, how they're doing their things every day. When I'm at work, I'm watching how they're so different and individual, the way they behave. And So I really hope I finish, to be honest.
I'm really
Yeah.
glad to hear that. That's so great.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's so important that we have more Black mental health specialists, and yeah, I think it'll be great. That's great.
Thanks. Thank you. You enjoy your team and make sure you give that cat milk. Don't forget.
No, they're lactose intolerant, apparently.
Wow,
I'll give
a
them some
cat
oat milk.
that is lactose intolerant. That's something new. That's something new. Whatever the cat drinks. Oh, I've never heard that one, to be honest. That's new to me. Okay. All right then. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
About you. Something very new, though you another sharpest tack that I found in the tin. You're still pressed fine on my walls, and you can be very sweet. Who needs confectionery when we walk together? I find we're followed when we walk together. I find we're followed when we walk together. I find we're followed by trails of ants.